In 1865, the guns of the Civil War fell silent, but a new battle was just beginning. 250 years of brutal African-American slavery ground to a halt, but the path towards racial justice remained uncharted. In the fallen capital of the Confederacy, one woman engineered a bridge between a history of oppression and a future of empowerment. She would use the pillars of education, economic uplift, and gender equality as the backbone of race progress. She was a woman known by many titles: teacher, activist, newspaper editor, and the nation's first African-American female bank president. This woman is Maggie Lena Walker, and this is her story.
Not to let nobody turn you round, let nobody turn you round, let nobody turn you round. Just keep on together.
Maggie Walker was born Maggie Lena Draper on July 15, 1864, during the final year of the Civil War. Her mother, a former slave named Elizabeth Draper, worked as a paid house servant in the home of the abolitionist and spy, Elizabeth Van Loo. Walker's biological father was an Irish-born Confederate soldier who worked nearby at the Chimborazo Military Hospital. Even with her father's light skin and her hazel eyes, Walker was considered colored, just like her mother. And as a person of color, slave or free, she was deemed inferior to whites. Her mother soon married a fellow servant from the Van Loo mansion, but tragically, he was killed when Maggie was only 11 years old. As a black single parent with no education or technical training, Walker's mother had few job prospects. To eke out a living, she toiled washing clothes for other families and delivered them ironed and folded, with the help of Maggie and her younger brother.
I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth, but instead with a clothes basket almost upon my head. I have come up on the rough side of the mountain. Maggie Lena Walker.
Walker grew up during Reconstruction, a period in which a federal agency called the Freedmen's Bureau aided the transition from slavery to citizenship. But the government alone could not accomplish such a great task, and so, for many African Americans, true community building was done through their own institutions, their churches, their schools, and their businesses. In Richmond, Virginia, Maggie Walker would play her part in all three. As a child, Walker lived next door to the centerpiece of Richmond's burgeoning black community, First African Baptist Church. It was here in this sanctuary where Walker forged her commitment to serving others and where she developed an unshakable faith that would come to guide her through every obstacle in her life. Walker was among the first generation of African Americans to attend public schools, where black teachers showed her a glimpse of her own potential.
They guided our childish feet, trained our restless hands, and created within our youthful souls an unquenchable search for knowledge and an undying ambition to be something and to do something. Maggie Lena Walker.
Her instructors taught Walker a revolutionary new vocabulary, terms like financial responsibility, race pride, and cooperation, all key tenets of her future leadership. When she completed high school, Walker and her fellow students practiced these concepts in one of the nation's first school segregation protests. When the city denied them a graduation ceremony in the Richmond Theater, Maggie Walker and her classmates took action.
Our parents pay taxes just the same as you white folks, and you've got no business spending big money out of those taxes to pay for the theater for white children unless you do the same for black children. Wendell P. Dabney, Richmond Colored Normal School, class of 1883.
While her school protest had proven unsuccessful, Walker's determination to overcome discrimination only grew stronger. She had already been teaching grade school for 3 years But when she married a handsome brick contractor named Armstead Walker Jr., she was forced out of her job because social norms required women to choose family over career. But Maggie Walker challenged these expectations, and in a short time would show the world that it was possible to be a wife, a mother, and a successful public figure all at once. The Walkers welcomed 2 sons, Russell and Melvin, and also adopted a distant relative, Polly. Sadly, a middle child died in infancy. In lieu of teaching, Walker focused her talents on a black fraternal organization called the Independent Order of St. Luke. Founded in Baltimore after the Civil War, the St. Luke's offered their members mutual aid by combining their limited resources and providing insurance in times of need. Maggie Walker had joined the St. Luke's through her church, enrolling as a teenager in Good Idea Council number 16. She quickly climbed the ranks of her local council, as well as the ceremonial posts of the national leadership body, the Right Worthy Grand Council. During her early leadership, Walker established a formal juvenile division where she stressed the principles of pride, thriftiness, and cooperation.
Our hope for the future lies with our children. For, as the twig is bent, the tree is inclined.
But by 1899, despite Walker's valuable efforts, the Independent Order of St. Luke teetered on bankruptcy, with little more than 1,000 adult members and only $31 in their treasury. When the St. Luke's chief leader stepped down, Maggie Walker was the only one to step up. Where others saw failure, Walker saw opportunity. And as the Right Worthy Grand Secretary, she was now positioned to guide the St. Luke's into a new century, with a new brand of leadership. By the dawn of the 20th century, many of Reconstruction's victories were eroded by a new wave of restrictions. Poll taxes, literacy tests, and violent intimidation all but erased the promise of the black vote, while customary discrimination gave way to mandated segregation. African Americans continued to face economic oppression with few job options and significant income inequality. This new era was known as Jim Crow, and for many blacks in the South, it was slavery by another name. Walker believed that African Americans could fight these limitations through economic empowerment, and so, in the summer of 1901, she laid out a step-by-step plan to accomplish just that. She proposed a bank, a department store, and a newspaper, all to be run under the banner of St. Luke.
Let us awake. Let us arise. We have the men. We have the women. We have the brains. Let us form a partnership of heads and brains and actually do something. Let us have a bank that will take the nickels and turn them into dollars.
Walker launched her plan by constructing a headquarters building in Richmond's largest black neighborhood, Jackson Ward. The majestic St. Luke Hall housed Walker's private office, along with the Treasury Department and vault, and the printing press of her newspaper, the St. Luke Herald. To staff these offices, Walker primarily hired African American women. She knew that while the race as a whole was struggling, it was black women who were doubly oppressed.
Who is so helpless as the Negro woman? Who is so circumscribed and hemmed in the race of life, in the struggle for bread, meat, and clothing, as the Negro woman?
At a time when Richmond's black women could only find menial jobs as washerwomen, servants, or factory hands, Walker provided careers imbued with dignity.
I found Mrs. Walker working like a beaver in St. Luke's Hall. In the building, working under her orders, were some 30 young colored women clerks, bookkeepers, typewriters, and stenographers. It was a novel and instructive sight. And the deeds that she has accomplished ought to afford encouragement and inspiration to every Negro in the land. Mrs. S.J.C. Ralph, the Baltimore Afro-American.
On November 2nd, 1903, Maggie Walker made history when she opened the St. Luke Penny Savings Bank. It was the first bank ever chartered and run by an African-American woman. When the bank opened its doors, some of its eager customers opened their first savings accounts.
The pennies, dimes, and dollars of one individual may be few indeed, but the combined dimes and dollars of 1,000 individuals changed the weak word few into the powerful word many.
The bank offered checking and savings accounts, mortgages, and investment capital to the entrepreneurs who would turn Jackson Ward into a center for black business. Richmond's primary commercial district, however, was downtown's Broad Street, where black shoppers could visit modern department stores, but under Jim Crow could not pass through front doors, sit at lunch counters, or even try on merchandise. To protest these conditions, Walker urged her community to buy black rather than support white businesses.
Every time you set foot in a white man's store, you are making the lion of prejudice stronger and stronger, and making it all the more easy for him to devour the Negro merchant who is trying to do business. The only way we can kill the lion of race prejudice is to stop feeding him.
Bringing her vision to the front door of segregated Richmond, Walker opened a general store in the heart of Broad Street. With its dazzling electric signs, its brown-skinned mannequins, and its impeccable staff, the St. Luke Emporium stood in proud defiance of Jim Crow. It was, as Mrs. Walker called it, a monument to black business. As outlined in her 1901 call to action, Walker established the St. Luke Herald as the trumpet to sound the orders of her organization. But as the editor-in-chief, Walker also used the newspaper for civil rights activism. Without the vote, Walker understood that the way for the black community to be heard was not with the ballot, but with the dollar. In 1904, the St. Luke Herald, along with the Richmond Planet, incited a boycott of Richmond's segregated streetcar system.
Every legislature in the South legislates against the Negro. Let us walk. Our self-respect demands that we walk. Maggie L. Walker, St. Luke Herald.
Denied revenue from black customers, the streetcar company was forced into bankruptcy after 2 years of boycotting. With her dual income as bank president and St. Luke's secretary, Maggie Walker purchased a stately home at 110.5 East Lee Street, in the center of Jackson Ward's Quality Row. The Walker Mansion served as both a sanctuary for her expanding family and as a strategic hub for the nation's vanguard of black leadership. Washington, Du Bois, Burroughs, and Bethune. Her elegant home, her luxury cars, and her very appearance all broadcast an example of hope and success that inspired a downtrodden community. Sadly, however, the Lee Street home was host to the greatest personal tragedy in Maggie Walker's life. In 1915, Walker's oldest son, Russell, accidentally shot and killed his father when he mistook him for an intruder.
Dear God, give me the strength to understand. Armstead was my staunch, tried and true friend. His departure, it's my eternal loss. Grant me the strength to carry on.
And carry on Maggie Walker did, pushing ever forward on a national scale. Walker and her field recruiters traveled to former slave communities in the Deep South and to urban enclaves in the North, spreading a message of uplift at every stop.
The future of the race is in the hands of our women. Love your race and show it by your practice. If you can individually feed and clothe and help yourself, you can combinedly clothe and help others. There is no reason why anyone should stand by idly waiting with folded arms, saying, "There is nothing I can do." We can do anything, just as soon as we learn the lesson of unity.
After 2.5 decades of tireless campaigning, Walker had built the St. Luke ranks to 100,000 members, with $500,000 in their treasury. But Maggie Walker did not limit her leadership to the St. Luke world only. She was a valued member of the nation's top civil rights organizations. She organized Richmond's first local branch of the NAACP and also sat on their national board of directors. As a philanthropist, Walker sponsored charities and education opportunities. She even helped to establish one of the South's first Black Girl Scout troops. And with the passage of the 19th Amendment, Walker didn't simply vote. She ran for office as director of Virginia's public education. But as the dimensions of her leadership grew in the 1920s, Walker began to suffer from a debilitating illness, diabetes. And though her body gave up on her, Walker never gave up on her community. And her community still needed her. In October of 1929, the stock market crashed, setting off a decade of bank closures and financial strife. The Great Depression tested all Americans, but the lower classes felt the most strain.
The Negro is being oppressed and elbowed out and pushed aside and driven out as he never was before. We as Negroes are losing everything. We are losing everywhere.
Walker knew the chance for survival was greatest through teamwork and cooperation. She initiated a merger between her St. Luke Bank and Richmond's remaining Black-owned banks. With their combined assets, the newly formed Consolidated Bank and Trust not only survived the Great Depression, but it remained active into the 21st century as the nation's longest continually run Black-owned bank. Sadly, even with her legendary resilience, Walker could not endure her advanced disease. At home, surrounded by her loved ones, Maggie Lena Walker passed away on December 15, 1934. She was 70 years old.
Come over high mountain sinner.
In an outpouring of grief, throngs of mourners, young and old, black and white, lined Richmond's rainy streets and crowded into the overflowing First African Baptist Church to pay their respects to a departed hero.
When we reflect seriously upon her achievements, we can compare her to a pebble on the shore of time, with its battling waves beating against her, polishing her, and making her a jewel fit to be set in heaven. Reverend W.T. Johnson, First African Baptist Church.
Walker was laid to rest alongside her husband and mother in her family plot at Evergreen Cemetery. With her final words, she whispered, "Have faith, have hope, have courage, and carry on." And carry on we have. Walker's momentum fueled the next generation's triumphs. School demonstrations, boycotts, and economic empowerment all proved effective during the modern civil rights movement and continue to be the tools of resistance the world over. Her admirers have honored her memory with civic monuments, the Walker Theater, the Maggie L. Walker High School, and the Maggie L. Walker National Historic Site. But perhaps the ultimate tribute to Walker's legacy has been the persistence of her enduring example. Maggie Walker bestowed on us the skills to fight the injustices, big or small, in our own lives. With education, cooperation, and determination, we can carry on.
Don't you let nobody turn you around, let nobody turn you around, let nobody turn you around. Just keep on together.